Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first Young Critics podcast here live from our studio in Bruges. My name is Atalia. I am one of the Young Critics here, and I am joined by my fellow Young Critic, Amber. Ali, another Young Critic, is going to join us very soon in Zoom, and we'll have a little chat on independent cinema, why it matters, what it means to us, and talk about our love for film, basically. And afterwards, me and Amber will have a little bit more in-depth interview with Seppe van Haken, our special guest here, who is head of MOOOV's distribution branch. And then, we'll just talk about what the role of MOOOV is in distributing cinema and independent cinema to a bigger audience. But first things first, is Ali here? Hi, Ali. Can you hear us? Can you say yes if you hear us?
Hello. I can hear you.
You can hear us?
Oh, yes, I can now.
Okay.
I can hear you. Hello, Atalia. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome, Ali. Welcome, Amber. Welcome, Seppe. Just to start things off with a very cliche question, but always a nice question to begin with. What is your favorite movie that you've seen so far on the MOOOV Film Festival?
My favorite movie from festival is something that I haven't seen yet. It's a Devil Doesn't Exist from Rasulov.
Okay, nice.
I heard a lot about it, but I didn't have the chance to see it, to watch.
But it's like your biggest anticipated film, basically, of the
Yes.
the festival. And Amber, what's yours?
I really liked The Pink Cloud. Like, to me, it was really interesting how it was written in 2017 and then shot in 2019, and it perfectly explained the situation of the past year, like with lockdown and quarantine. Like, it's a film about a movie where there's a cloud outside and you can't go out or you'll die in 10 seconds. And I think the resemblance with the COVID crisis was really interesting to me, and the emotions that are shown in the movie are very relatable.
Yeah.
So I really liked it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as well, because it was one of the first movies I watched, and I was also like, I've been through this.
Yeah, it's also crazy how it feels like a science fiction movie, but we're like living through it. So
yeah, definitely.
Crazy.
Yeah, my personal favorite that I've seen so far is Futur 3, or like, well, I don't know if my German is that good, but No Hard Feelings, which is just a really fun coming of age story about a gay Iranian guy who lives in Germany, has an immigration background, and he has to work at a community service and meet some new friends. And it's just like, I don't know, just a really beautiful story about identity and love, and just beautiful cinematography and just relatable characters as well, which I really enjoy, because I feel like I vibe with these people in a night out. All right, so then let's just start the talk. Ali, this was your idea to come up with having a talk on independent cinema. Why are you so passionate about this? Why did you feel the need to really talk about why independent cinema matters?
Thank you. In my opinion, independent cinema is where new ideas are born. Independent cinema is where people are not afraid to lose some money. In the industry of silent cinema, the blockbusters, cinema is like an asset, not an art. Because there are a lot of money behind the movie, and that would be too risky for filmmakers, for directors, for producers. But in independent cinema, people who have brilliant ideas and have daring behaviors start to make what they want. And from those small sparks of, let's say, creativity, new ideas, new themes, new, let's say, a stream of arts are born. And that's why I truly love independent cinema. And I think if you want to look for new things, we should always look in independent cinema, not the blockbuster size.
Yeah, I do definitely agree with you that there are like a lot of the new ideas are from independent cinema. Always have been basically like mainstream cinema, like even back in the '60s with independent films such as Easy Rider that basically broke an entire like new way for Hollywood to figure out like what works with people and just. Figure out like new ways to talk about certain subjects because with Easy Rider, just the thing that comes up to me is like it made drugs more as a theme that could be talked about without any prejudice really, or in a weird propagandistic way. More violence as well that comes from it as a thing. So I think it's been like from fairly early on, I think like the movies on outskirts have been very important as a way to influence the mainstream cinema. And I think today as well, you can still see that. Like for me, for example, I see that in movies from A24. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, Ali?
Could you please repeat the name of the movie?
No, A24 is like a production studio.
The company. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So I think they're really interesting for creating like this new influence of like art house horror films because A24 has been like basically I think they made things like the Lighthouse, Midsommar, yeah, definitely. Some of my favorite movies, basically, of the last couple of years have been introduced by them, and I think it's very interesting how they, redefine a genre that I think has been kind of exhausted for a long time. I don't know how you guys feel about like early horror cinema or like from the 90s and the 2000s, but I felt like it became quite repetitive with Paranormal Activity 6 and and onwards, and even Conjuring, whatever. But yeah, that's like my opinion on like how it further influences how you can see that through. I don't know if you guys have like any independent movies that you think have had a big influence on mainstream or just techniques that you guys think of that.
Yeah, I just think that, like you said, A24, they kind of nowadays make maybe the more popular movies or like the new creative stories are being told because when you look at the blockbusters or like what's at the top of the best making movies nowadays, it's like Marvel films, and you can kind of like say, oh, it's the same story every single time told in a different way, kind of. So yeah, I think there's obviously room for more creative stories and yeah, more new stories that are kind of like very interesting with directors who have a lot of interesting things to say. And yeah, I think there's a lot of room for that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I also think like if you just look at the Oscars, I don't know, Ali, if you have followed the Oscars today, because the news broke out for all the winners. A lot of new, diverse winners, finally. It's taken a long time. But yeah, there's also a couple of A24 movies. I think Minari was produced by them, or Minari. I don't exactly know how you say it. But yeah, I think it's interesting that, that influence and even just the presence of independent film sticks, I think. Don't know, Ali, is there anything that you want to add to that, or?
Of course, independent movies have found their way into, as you said, like Academy Awards and World Awards in the past couple of years. Even in some independent Iranian movies, such as The Separation or The Salesman, they even were nominated and won Oscars. And that's, as you said, a good sign. I believe that we need to try to bring mainstream audience to these movies. It's a little bit difficult, but movies such as The Parasite was able to do that, and that's something that brings hope to my heart. That in near future, more broad audience are going to be focused on independent cinema, and that is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, because I also think, like, I don't know about you guys, but for example, during like lockdown with all the online content that we have been like binge watching, like I've seen everything on Netflix right now, and I love my Netflix the reality shows. I watch The Circle, I'm not gonna lie. But I think it is, I've also been exploring things like MOOOV and also watching like those little movies. So I don't know what you guys think, or maybe that could influence a little bit on if the mainstream audience could be more interested in exploring different.
I think
things.
independent cinema is way more accessible nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Nomadland, who won Best Picture yesterday, is being released on Disney Plus this Friday. So that's kind of like the line between independent cinema, but also being mainstream. Like Disney is huge, but they have those blockbusters as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the line maybe is a bit more blurred somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I think so definitely as well, because even like Nomadland is an independent film, but basically it is, the money is backed by 20th Century Fox, so it is already, like you said, very blurred production wise. But I don't know how you guys define like independent cinema, but for me it's more like a feeling that these movies create. Basically, like they feel more niche, they feel like more relatable in a sense.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know, Ali, is there anything else that you want to talk about for independent cinema? Because we're almost running out of time for this little part of the conversation. So if there's anything.
Okay, I just wanted to add something about how you said the Corona situation affected the behavior of people watching movies. Yes, it made movies more accessible, and I believe in long run it's going to make its impact, a lasting impact on how we treat cinema. Where people learn that they can access movies more easier, and that is very good for independent cinema, because independent cinema is usually low budget movies, and being more accessible by a broader audience is good for those who make these movies, and encourage them to do that more often. And one last thing that I wanted to add is that blockbuster cinema has changed our taste during years. For example, if you look at the top highest grossing movies of past 5 years and compare it to, for example, to 90s, 80s, you will see that in recent years, highest grossing movies are generally superhero movies, or, for example, Star Wars movies. But in those times, we had, for example, in the early 90s, we had Aladdin, Titanic, Jurassic Park. Movies from all different types of genres were very popular. I think the only let's say, device that can bring more diversity to our cinema, to our taste, to our audience, is independent cinema. And I believe that this, let's say, responsibility is on the shoulder of pioneers and young directors who want to start a career. And I wish we see more independent cinema in global awards and ceremonies in the coming years.
All right. Thank you, Ali, for joining us. Too bad you couldn't be here live, but it was a pleasure to see you. Hopefully, we'll see you live very soon. Who knows? But thank you for joining us. Bye. All right. So then we'll go over to the next part of our conversation with you, Seppe. We would. Like to ask you, like MOOOV doesn't not only try to bring global cinema, independent cinema to the masses through its film festival, but you guys also distribute independent and global films every year just in the cinema. And I didn't know that. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but could you tell us a little bit more about that? And
yeah, it's like you say, it's just because it's a part of our organization that's not as visible as a film festival, because for a film festival, we communicate a lot, and for distribution, it's the cinemas who communicate. And actually, we distribute. It depends, 6, 8, 9, 10 movies a year in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And it's mainly focused on global cinema, but it sometimes happens that we also distribute European or even Belgian films, but with a certain, a certain worldview. The tagline of our organization is "Films Facing the World," and I think that describes it very well. And the reason we do that is because we, a couple of years ago, we felt that there weren't a lot of global films or world cinema, as you may call it, being released in Belgium and the Netherlands, and we see it as part of our mission to make sure that the diversity in film is here in Belgium. That you can see films from India or Latin America or Asia in cinemas, and we want to strengthen that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because like I also feel like at MOOOV I do like discover so many different sides of like Iranian cinema. I'm not used to that at all, but there's some like very fascinating movies. So I think it's like it's great that you guys just bring that to the table here because that is something that is that you can't underestimate. Yeah,
And I think it's also because you were talking about independent cinema. I think you need that diversity of films. I don't think we don't always reach a very large audience with our films, but I think you need that diversity also to strengthen, film culture in general. So I think it's one extra piece for the puzzle and to support independent cinema that way.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to be introducing to a broader array of movies to go and see. So this year for the film festival, there's a focus on Iranian cinema.
Yeah.
So how is the program set up? Like how do you guys decide? Okay, this year we're going to focus mainly on those kinds of movies.
Yeah, so the programming process is actually, we have a team of 6 or 7 programmers for the film festival, and they all watch a lot of movies. So at the MOOOV Film Festival, there are no world premieres, so that's not an issue for us. We try to have some Belgian premieres, but it's and so actually we try to see as many films as possible from other film festivals. So the bigger, what they call the A-list festivals. So that's Toronto, that's Cannes, but also a bit smaller festivals like Rotterdam or Locarno. And then we make the selection, and everybody gets their say. We discuss the films, and then how we come to focus on Iranian cinema this year is just because we, during the process, we kind of feel like, okay, there's a lot of good Iranian films this year, and then we build a program around it, and then we look a bit further. Are there any more Iranian films being released in film festivals? So that's a bit how we come to that. It's a very it's a very natural process with a lot of discussion and a lot of debating and sometimes killing your darlings and yeah.
Is there a darling that you had to kill this time that you felt that was for Iranian cinema?
For Iranian cinema, not really. I think we've selected the best. We have the best Iranian cinema from the last year is being presented. There were some other Iranian films that we didn't feel like it's not always easy to say, but that they weren't good enough. But you have to make a selection, and of course, Iran is a very big. They have very big film production, so it's not like, I think even when you would compare it to Belgium or Netherlands, there are lots and lots of Iranian films being made, so you have to make a selection. And I think we've selected a very diverse number of Iranian films. So for example, Radiograph of a Family, it's like a small documentary that was the opening film, but also a film like Careless Crimes, and it's a very intellectual film. I think you really have to stay focused, and you don't even know what's happening, and even at the end you don't know. But also 6.5. I think it's for a very broad audience. So I think it's very diverse, and we also try to have a very diverse selection of Iranian films to show the diversity in that film industry of Iran.
Okay, so it's also all at film festivals that you go look for these movies. It's not that you're trying to contact with like distributors from Iran itself, because I don't know if that would be difficult with like language barriers or something.
Sometimes it happens. So most of the time we. So the festivals are always the starting point, I think. But sometimes it happens that we have local contacts in Iran. In some countries, we just have the local contacts, and they can tell us, oh, well, that's another interesting film, because sometimes it's not always easy for filmmakers in different countries to get their films in the festivals. For example, for Iran, there's a very interesting anecdote that, for example, a lot of the Western festivals work with the Film Freeway, which is a platform where independent filmmakers from all around the world can submit their films for film festivals, but you have to pay a small fee. And but the problem is they only work with PayPal, and in Iran, the PayPal is forbidden. So there's like a very big barrier, and then it helps that you have direct contact, so you can maybe select some other films. So it's. Yeah, it's not always easy to get in the European festivals.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, definitely. Is it the movies from Iran? Has that been the biggest hurdle you've had so far for contacting in sense of locals, or has it?
No, I think it's all right. It's of course there's always the issue with you have the Iranian government that's not always keen on the films that are being produced. For example, the Mohammad Razulov from There Is No Evil, which Ali talked about. He could only produce his film or make his film because it's made up of I think 3 or 4 short films actually. So, and otherwise he wouldn't have been able to make it. So there's always that issue, but I think it's. Most of the time, it's all right. They have their ways, and it's not it's not a closed society, so it's there are always ways to contact them.
Nice.
So here in Belgium, we have obviously other film festivals here as well, like Ghent or Ostende. But how do you think that the MOOOV Film Festival kind of sets itself apart from those festivals, and what do you think like it kind of makes it different a little bit?
So obviously there's a focus on global cinema, but of course in Ghent they also have a global cinema section. But I think our focus thematically is I think there may be the smaller films being presented at MOOOV. I think in Filmfest Ghent is the bigger global cinema being presented, even though we also select it. I think Ostende is more as the same thing, and I think what sets us even more apart is that we are not looking for the glimmer and glitter of the film. In film we don't have red carpet events, or we just focus on the films, and we focus on debates and on all these kinds of things. So I think the focus is a bit more on maybe the issues that are being presented in the films, and we have debates around, and then we work together with different organizations. For example, Alva Valve and NGOs are partners of the festival, so that's also very important for us. And I think that kind of atmosphere is, I think, the big difference when you compare it to Ostende or Ghent. I think there may be the film as we know it, like with the red carpet, is more important, and that is also very, I think, good for film, because that gives film a big roar and makes people very, I think, engaged in cinema and in film. And they go to the film festival maybe for the film stars that are being there. Like this year in Ghent, Viggo Mortensen was there.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a bit,
Yeah, that was crazy. I don't know how they got him.
But we never have these big directors or these big movie stars, and we also don't. Like, it would be nice, but it's not a big goal for us to have them. It's nice, but
I think like maybe a part that goes beyond the film festival. I think with MOOOV there's also a big part of like education and like giving more explanation about the movies. Yeah.
So that's that's also maybe interesting, because when we select our films, the artistic aspect is one thing. So we are looking for the best global cinema, but then you also have the themes and that are in the film. So maybe we can also select a film that is not maybe the best film when you in a creative way, but it can have some interesting themes. Most of the time, I think when you look at some documentaries, I think that's a good example that we are somewhere in between, looking for good cinema, but also something educational, and it shifts between the two. Sometimes you have films that are perfectly, in between there, but sometimes it's more educational. I'm thinking one of the films on the festival this year is The Great Green Wall, and it's because I don't think it's a nice documentary, but it's artistically it's not the best film, maybe, but it's really
But doesn't
interesting.
have to
No,
necessarily, right?
no, it's not always necessary for us.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the conversation is the most important part, not the
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the like necessarily.
But on the other hand, it's also interesting to show like, in what how creative directors can be
Yeah.
in other parts of the world, that we don't
Yeah,
always
definitely.
need to look at Europe or the United States for these things. It's,
It's a combination of the two for a bit.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely that as well. Because I saw, for example, like Yalda, which I also thought was just a really interesting concept to have like this idea of a reality show being like very grounded in and in mixing it with such a heavy like topic as like about execution and everything. It felt like a very Black Mirror
Yeah.
type of episode.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to also see that like all those ideas also come from all over the world, and I thought it was just an interesting take on it. Definitely.
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
So this year the festival was mostly online. So how was it kind of like different to organizing one physical in previous years? And maybe how do you think that maybe influenced like the distribution of these movies in actual cinemas? Because they're not open right now.
Yeah. So the preparation for the festival was, of course, very different. There was a lot of learning for us. We had to learn a lot. Because other years, the preparation for the festival, it can be very stressy, but in some way we always know what to do and there are these steps. And this year we had to figure everything out. So that was very different. And then there was a lot of debate and discussion on how should we approach this. Do we want a regular VOD selection where you could, for example, for 2 weeks, you would just have like 50 films online and you can just choose every evening, or are we looking for the real festival feeling? And we went for that thing. Like we selected, we programmed the film like you would have in a regular festival. There were different reasons for that. And then also one of the important things is how can we all these other things that are important at our festival, how can we also put these things online, like debates, Q&As with the directors, how can we engage our audience, all these things. We had to, make decisions on that, we had to think on that. And that was, a big learning process for us, but I hope I hope it works.
Yeah, I think you're managing. I think it's really interesting to have like the whole idea of like go into the theater yourself and
At
stuff.
home.
Yeah.
It feels like you're watching it with someone, with other people who there's also watching it at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's a very like cute idea to like go for that instead of doing it like watch it now. You can watch it for 48 hours like a VOD.
Yeah, and for me it was also like I don't know about you, but when I'm at home and I want to watch a film, and then I always have the issue that I don't know what film to watch, and I'm actually for 1 hour just choosing the film. And sometimes I'm not even in the mood anymore to watch a film.
3 hours pass.
And now you have if you watch a film tonight, you have maybe 4 or 5 choices, and then you go from there. And I also like the idea that some other people are watching together with you, and you can discuss afterwards. Because maybe if it would be just a regular VOD, maybe your friends would watch it a week later, and it's a bit more, more fluent.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that whole idea of like, what are we gonna watch at dinner? And it just keep on scrolling, and your dinner's cold, and you're like, okay, I guess no movie.
And then we were talking about the distribution of films, and I think that's a big issue still. I think, of course, a lot of films are being postponed. Some of the smaller titles, but definitely the bigger titles.
Yeah.
The James Bond or the Wes Anderson or all these titles. But it's also for smaller films, like in global cinema, it's the same thing, because of course, film is it's somewhere in between the line of an art, but it's also a very commercial product. So you have to make sure you gain enough money on your films. So releasing films online today is not. It's you. How do you say? You don't. It doesn't really bring up you don't really get enough money for it.
Yeah.
Make enough
Just
profit.
profit,
Making a profit, compared to releasing a film in cinema. It's still not the same. I think that today is a big issue with distributors, and that's why today not as many films are being released online as they would have been in the cinema, because they are just waiting for the cinemas to reopen. And I think it's interesting because some other films are being released online, but I don't think it's not working at the moment. There needs to change something in the.
So did you also experience that while looking for movies that some of the distributors were holding it back for cinema releases and that you couldn't get to some of the?
Well, actually, it helped that we programmed the film in different time slots, and we wouldn't have been able to get some of the films if they were just online for 2 weeks. So, and that was something we heard very often. So that was also one of the reasons why we programmed them at different time slots, because then they were, you have more that event feeling, and distributors and sales agents were much more comfortable to release have the film at the film festival.
Yeah, because also more of exclusive and then just on those separate days.
Yeah, and there's still that idea of a VOD release and a regular cinema release, and if we would have put it on the festival for 2 weeks, for example, then they would have had the feeling that the film had been on VOD and now it had just been 2 online screenings, and that's. I think also maybe it's better because you also you have the thing that people tend to have the idea that I'm going to watch that film at the MOOOV Film Festival, and then they say, well, I'm going to watch tonight, and then that night it doesn't work, and they keep postponing, and then at the end it's 2 weeks have passed and they haven't seen the film, and now people have to be ready in their couch, and they have put it in their agenda because they know it's only screening tonight, and then I hope it works, and that was also the kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah. I also had definitely an alarm set for the movies that I had to watch. Okay, it's on now, go for it.
I need to see it.
Yeah, don't want to miss out. Yeah.
Okay, I think that those were all the questions that we had for today, or.
Yes, I think so. The last thing that we maybe wanted to ask for the people listening, if you had any recommendations for that people should definitely look out for to watch at MOOOV.
So I think tonight and I think also tomorrow, Mogul Mowgli is showing with Riz Ahmed, who has been nominated for Best Actor, who is in Sound of Metal, Belgian co-production, and he has another film that we are showing at the festival, Mogul Mowgli, and it's a very personal film for him. A lot of his own experience are in that film, and it's about him. He's a rapper in real life, and it's also in the film, and it's about him and his identity as he's living in UK, but from his parents are from Pakistan, and the whole struggle with his identity. And it's a very good film, very nice film.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, we were talking about it before it as well. That was one of the ones to watch.
Yeah, Riz Ahmed is of course a
really good actor.
Great actor.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Sepa, for giving us so many interesting insights into film distribution and how MOOOV works. It was a joy. Ali, if you're still listening to the live stream, I don't know where you are, but also thank you for inspiring this podcast and coming up with the idea. And thank you for joining in on the conversation. I don't know what else to add. I think the podcast will be posted later on this week or maybe next week for people who have only just joined in and missed everything. I know, sad. You can rewatch it again. And this is the first Young Critics podcast. It's not the last, but keep an eye out on social media, on Instagram, to figure out when the next Young Critics podcast is going to drop. And don't forget to enjoy the festival, everyone, and check out Mogul Mowgli, what releases tomorrow. And good night.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.